All right, so here we go. It is Clark Munroe. He is the host of the Squadcast with Max Ritzy. He is the producer for the Rod Peterson Show. You see him everywhere, and he's TikTok famous, ladies and gentlemen. He is live and in person. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, not much. Just got done making a TikTok. I started a new series today going over some team previews. So that's exciting. Just Anaheim out of the way. So I didn't take notes for what we're going to talk about tonight because Anaheim's pretty boring this offseason. But overall, staying busy, doing a lot of stuff, watching some football with the CFL back on TV and everything. And I got the Blue Jays wild card chase. Man, that's intense right now. Oh, and the Mariners are losing right now. So everything's kind of working out really well. So that's got my attention. But I'm so excited that, hockey talk is starting back up again. And here we go.
Oh, for sure. Well, one question I want to ask you. Do you think the Blue Jays get in?
Well, they've got a real uphill battle going. But me and Max, obviously, like I said, on the Squadcast over here, we've been really paying attention to these last couple of weeks specifically. And right now they're in a series against the Yankees, and then they got the Orioles, and then they got the Rays. So these next 11 games, including today, which they were able to win against the Yankees, these next 11 games are pretty much do or die for if they want to make the playoffs. They've got to beat the Yankees. They have to take all the games against the Orioles. If they don't, that's not going to help them at all. And then the Rays are it's going to be a real measuring stick against the Rays. So we'll see. But man, they have made it interesting because they had it early and then they really stumbled, and then now they're coming back real hot. So I hope they can keep it up. It's just made for a fun run.
My grandfather said today, and he's a huge Blue Jays fan. So I listen to everything he says. He's seen it all, been through it all, ups, downs, everything in between. And he said the Blue Jays hit their lull, maybe at the right time, because it looks like the Yankees are scuffling right now. So maybe the Blue Jays are getting hot now at the right time, and it may be that heater that gets them in there.
Yeah, and they swept the A's, which is kind of the big deal, right? Because the A's were ahead of them, and they're above the A's now. The Mariners are losing tonight against the Astros. I was watching that one. It's on Sportsnet, so I was watching that. And they're the other team. So if they can kind of just maintain with those guys, they have to catch up to Boston and New York, one of the two, either way. So no matter how the A's and the Mariners do, the Jays have to still catch up to those guys if they want to make the playoffs. So it won't be easy.
No, it won't be easy, but it'll be fun to watch. It's going to be exciting ball. So we'll keep that going. Well, let's get to the topic du jour. Obviously, having you on, you're wearing a Leafs jersey. I'm a Leafs fan. This is an easy talk right here. I want to talk about right out of the gate the Toronto Maple Leafs defense and the rumor that is PK Subban. I want to ask you, this one's floating around out there. Everybody's kind of getting a little excited. Before the season, everybody gets the juices going, especially when it's Subban. I want to know, would you like PK Subban on this team? For me, I'll say I'd like him, but after this season on a show me type deal, I don't want him now at the contract, whether it's retained, because that means moving Kerfoot or moving somebody else to bring him in. And he's not the PK Subban we used to know. So he'd be in a lesser role. I'd like to bring him in after this. But what do you think? Is there juice to this?
I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm so glad I was browsing Twitter before this because I just saw this and my eyes widened because I was thinking, is this real or is this some sort of fan throwing out a thing? But this is it Mark Murphy or something out of Boston? This is a guy who's a reporter. He's
Jimmy Murphy.
Sorry, that's him. So he's a guy. This isn't just some random fan saying a silly rumor. This is a thing. So I did a little looking at it. Double retained, he would be just over $2.2 million, I think. So that's similar to what Nick Foligno did. He had to retain once, and then another team had to retain again.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do. But there are a lot of teams right now that could accommodate that. That wouldn't be. I don't think that would be a problem. And I don't think New Jersey would have a problem retaining half in the first place. So there is that. But like you said, is it going to be the right move for the Leafs right now? I think PK Subban would be. I'm going to think that would be a halfway through the season type of move. I don't think that's going to be a before the season type of move, if that happens at all. It just seems like the type of deal where I think they're going to give. We're talking the Leafs defensive group right now. I think they're going to give Sandin and Lilgren and Dermott the chance to determine whether they're going to be good enough or not. I don't know if Lilligren's in that top 3 plan right now, but I think it's Sandin and Dermott. I think they're going to give them a good couple of months, James. I think they're going to, really allow them to either make the team or not. And I don't think they're going to be in a rush to necessarily bring in some sort of vet to kind of diminish their time. I think they want to give it to them this year. I've heard you talk about it. I think it's time to let Sandin tell us who he is. I think it's time to let Travis Dermott have a regular spot in the lineup. And then if Lilgren's going to come up or whoever else, I think it's time to let that happen. But that doesn't mean if they're bad, that it's going to only be that way. I think that's where we might see these conversations start happening. And PK Subban at 2.2, whatever it is, $2.3 million would be a really interesting option on the bottom pair. But he's not top 4 anymore. Like you said, it's not the same PK Subban. But if you're talking about a charismatic guy to come in and be a third pair, he's been there. He's done a few things in his career. He's had some ups and downs. It seems like everywhere he goes, there's that thing where it's like, is he a good locker room guy? I don't know, but exactly. I think he's now that he's a single guy. He lost Lindsey Vonn, his wife, or whatever she was to him. I think I've seen some pictures of the guy. He's slimmed down. He's jacked up a little bit. So he might be a different PK Subban than the one we've seen. If you know what I'm saying. Like, it's not the same old one, but I don't know if he's going to be the same new version of PK Subban either. I think he might be kind of maybe rebuilt altogether. Again, my main answer would be, I don't think we see any moves until maybe 2 months into the season, maybe end of November, early December is when we might see them. But I think they're going to give those guys a chance. PK would be interesting though. He'd make it fun.
He'd make it fun. You know what? I'll walk back a little bit of what I said. Maybe at the trade deadline to be a guy that I want to bring in. But I want this group right now. I want this group that was pissed off and dejected to do things and see where they are. Like Sandin, I want to see if we're losing Morgan Rielly, which we'll talk about as a separate issue here in a moment. If we're losing Morgan Rielly for whatever, if we trade him or if he walks, I want Sandin to be able to run the first power play unit, know what's expected of him, and to be able to take those steps as that pass rusher and be the main guy under D, because that's what people are anointing him to be, and that's what seems to be the organization's path for him as well. So I want him to be stable. Timothy Lilgren, I think that ship has sailed. I think that's done. I like the guy. I was excited when we got him at 17. Everybody passed over him because he had the mono. But this guy here doesn't seem to be able to take that next step and has been, overstepped by other guys in the organization. And if you ask me, I look at a guy like Brendan Manel that we signed, might be a guy to step over him. Again, Mac Hollowell's making a lot of noise to try to come up. Then you sign a couple guys like Alex Biega and Phil Kral that can also step over this guy. So you look at what Lilgren can do, and I'm like, can those guys do it better? Maybe with less headaches. Like, he's had ample opportunity, and he's never really seized a moment or given you a flash. And for Dermott, we know what Dermott is. Dermott's an arsehole to play against. He's hard against the boards. He talks a lot, and he can give you some of those sporadic plays where you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then like Jake Gardner, he can make you scratch your head and pull your hair out. But you know what you're getting in Dermott. It's hot and cold, but at least he's a bottom pair guy you can rely on for minutes. But Lilgren, I'm done with Lilgren. I'm done wanting this guy to be the guy we hoped he was going to be.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like you mentioned Brendan Manel, he's a guy I saw it play in junior. He was with the Lethbridge Hurricanes back in the day. And James, I might have to just get you to pause it for a second.
No problem. Back after a brief little break there, but here we go with Clark and Manel.
Manel, Brendan Manel. I saw him in junior. The guy is a very dynamic offensive defenseman. He's been over in Russia for the last couple of years, and he played pretty well over there, put up some numbers. But I don't know if he's the type of guy who's gonna, displant Lilgren necessarily. He might work his way up there. I think he needs some time back in North America to get his feet back under him, get to know some of his teammates. But I definitely think Lilgren is at that point. It's make or break for him. He's either gonna be the seventh defenseman to rotate in, or they're moving him. They're packaging him in some sort of trade, and maybe that's where midway through the season we see them try to get a big name top six winger to play on one of those top two lines, because I think that's probably the number one question mark with this organization right now is who's going to be on their top six left wing. There's a lot of options, but I don't know how many of them are great. And we'll get to that, I'm sure. But
oh yes,
in terms of the defensemen, really, in my opinion, I don't think that's really the problem right now with the team. I think, they're as stable as they've been in years on defense, especially with bringing in TJ Brody. Morgan Rielly has kind of bounced back a little bit from a bit of a struggle. And Muzzin and Hall, I think, have locked down that shutdown defensive pair in the middle. And then, like you said earlier, Sandin, he's shown flashes. Dermott has shown flashes. We haven't seen 100% of what Dermott is, I don't think. And that's where I'd like to see him just have a normal role. And, I think he needs to know what his role is, because I think he's been up in the lineup, down in the lineup, benched, up in the press box. He's been all over the place. I think if he had a specific role, I really think that we would see a different Travis Dermott. So, I'm very curious to see where it all goes coming into the season. But I personally think that the defense is actually pretty stable right now compared to what we've seen.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, the other one for me, I look at Morgan Rielly and I say this, he has no deal going beyond this season. And we've watched guys walk, and everybody's starting to get a little antsy. You didn't get anything for Hyman. Well, you didn't get anything for Van Riemsdyk and this guy and that guy. For me, I want Morgan Rielly to stay. But here's a good thing that just happened, and I'll link this to you. I watched your TikTok on it. Colton Parayko signed that deal. And that is a deal that's very comparable to what Morgan Rielly probably should sign. Morgan Rielly is also older than Colton Parayko, I do believe. So it would make sense for the Leafs to walk into that kind of deal with Morgan Rielly if he wants to stay. And for all indications, everywhere it's been said, Morgan Rielly wants to take a team-friendly deal. And after all these teams went crazy on D, signing guys, Colton Parayko signing that, maybe kind of resets the market for marquee kind of defensemen yet again. And that could allow Rielly maybe to sign that deal and everybody to feel good about it, because it's a raise on what he's making now, but it's also, I'd say, a hometown discount for sure, because I bet you if he went to the open market, he'd get the 7-8 he's looking for from Vancouver or Vegas, who seems to be in on everybody, or maybe Seattle, who knows. But I think that deal, Colton Parayko, is the starting point, and they work out something around there. And I think they should announce it before the beginning of the season, because I don't want any circus shows this year. We've had so many throughout the years. You look at Matthews, Marner, Nylander, all these things, Babcock, they've all hung over the team. This year should be just straight focus, all or nothing. This group needs to get it done. I want Rielly to be signed because he deserves it. Been here forever, has been a great soldier, been through the Tyson Berry, the whole 9 yards of that shit. I want to see this guy sign the deal and stick around.
Yeah, the Dion Phaneufs, the Phil Kessels, the Leo Komarov, he's seen it all. He's been through thick and thin, mostly thin. But yeah, no, he is the longest tenured Leaf, and he was in talks to be the captain when John Tavares came in. He was in that conversation. So I would like to see him stick around as well. I think you saw my video, so you know how I feel about how the Parayko deal, like you said, I feel like it directly correlates to what Morgan should be at. Now, we saw that slew of 9.5, 8.5, 8.4. We saw all those 8.9 millions of dollar contracts go to Seth Jones, to Miro Heiskanen, to Cale Makar, to Zach Werenski, and a couple other ones. But those guys are younger. They haven't got their money yet. Morgan Rielly's coming off, I think it was a 6-year deal at $5 million. That's what's just ending. He's got his last year of that. So he has made $30 million in his career, plus whatever was before that in his entry-level contract. So he's in a different situation. He hasn't ever been the number one dedicated guy to his team like the other younger guys may have been, or they're projected to be, which is why they're getting that money. They're also restricted free agents who are being bought unrestricted free agent years. That always comes into play as well. But Morgan's in a different boat. He, like you said, I think he's 1 year older than Colton Parayko, and he's in a different situation where he isn't a two-way guy like some of those guys are. Like Seth Jones, I would be comfortable putting him as my number one penalty killer and also on my power play type of deal. Darnell Nurse, etc. Whereas Morgan Rielly, I think, knows his role at this point. He knows where the team is at. His wife is in Toronto, Tessa Virtue, right? So she's there. He could easily become one of the longest tenured Leafs of history in Toronto if he signs this 8-year deal and maybe stays a little longer, because he'll be probably 35, I think, by the end of that deal, if that happens. So he could set himself up for decades by simply signing an 8-year deal now. And I think the $6.5 million price point is way more appropriate for him than an 8 to 9 to 9.5. Even though I know the market is what the market is. But I do believe Morgan Rielly is ready. Everything we've heard that he wants to take a discount. My question on that was, is he taking a discount on what he's currently making, which is 5, which he's not doing that, or is he taking a discount on what some of the other guys around him are making? So that's going to be the biggest question. Is he ready to be that team-friendly deal that helps teams win championships, or is he not? And if he's not, I think you're right. There shouldn't be anything hanging over this team this year. He'll be traded, I think, before the season starts, if that's the case. And I hope that they are able to sign him before the season, because I agree with you. I don't want the distractions. Let's move on if that's going to be the case. And the good part about a $5 million Morgan Rielly is that he can probably bring you a big package in return. I don't know what that is, but I think there'd be a team that would be willing to add a $5 million defenseman and also be able to give you quite a bit. And whether that's Vancouver, Seattle, there's probably a few other teams if we really dove into it, but we don't need to do that yet. I do think he'll be signing here long term.
Well, let's just walk one thing back, because I know in the comment section I'll get this one and you'll get this one. Colton Parayko's older than Morgan Rielly. Morgan Rielly is only 27, and it feels like he's been in this league forever. We talked about all the teams and played on with the Toronto Maple Leafs and different players. It does feel like he's been here forever, but even still, I think everything still fits in the same way with this guy. I think you need to get a deal done before the season starts, kill the clouds above your head, and allow this thing to go through the way it should, or move him and get stuff back and anoint Rasmus Sandin to be that guy and let the season run as it will. But we will see what happens, whether it's PK, whether it's Rielly sticking around, who knows? Lots of names. Another name that I want to talk about right quick on the defensive side of things before we move on with the Leafs. This goes with the Arizona Coyotes, who seem to be just moving everything that's not nailed down. They now have Chychrun on the block, and the asking price is 2 first-round picks. When does it end in Arizona, and what are they going to do? Are they really loading up for the fact that they think they might get Austin Matthews in a few years? Is that what they're doing? That's what everybody's saying they're trying to do. Are they trying to make sure they get a Shane Wright? Are they trying to make sure they get Connor Bedard? And then you throw in Austin Matthews to play with those awesome 2 players. But who else do they have beyond that, Clark? And it seems like all they're going to have is draft picks.
Clayton Keller. That's it.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, if you're going to have all the cap space in the world, great. But I don't look at Austin Matthews as a guy who wants to go to a garbage bottom dwelling team. Even if they get Shane Wright and Connor Bedard, that's still an if that happens. If they win both lotteries, there's a lot at stake there. Obviously they're going to give themselves as many chances as possible to win the lotteries. That's what they're clearly doing. But I just don't think Austin Matthews is the type of player who wants to just go make money and do nothing for the rest of his career. I think Austin Matthews is a legacy player who wants to be the guy on the team in the market, in a building organization that's flourishing at the moment. And losing in the first round maybe isn't flourishing, but they have something built pretty solid with Toronto right now that should be sustainable long term if everything continues the way that it is currently. And Arizona, it's fun. They're tearing it down. They're getting all these draft picks. That's great. But in 3 years or whatever it is, when Austin Matthews is a free agent, he's going to have 2 options. He's going to make a ton of money in Arizona and be last place for the rest of his career, or he's going to stay in Toronto and continue building what's already been built. And I just don't see him. The storylines are great, but I don't see him going to Arizona just cause it's Arizona. And by the time this happens, they might be in Houston. They might be somewhere else. Anyway.
That's just it there too, right?
So I mean, it sounds like they're gonna have another arena in Arizona that they're gonna stay in, or in the Phoenix area that they will stay in. But how long is that one gonna last? And if that's the case, the organization is just a mess year after year. Make up a new reason every single year that it's there's money, there's no money, there's no fans. So every year there's a new reason why the Arizona Coyotes are a trash bin. So I don't see why Matthews wants to go there. Anyways.
No, I said that's the same thing though. I mean, for Arizona, I think the NHL just needs to admit it failed. Just say that you failed,
Say you
pack it
failed.
up, and move it to somewhere where it's going to be successful. Just admit you failed. That's all you need to do here. You've thrown everything you could at it. You've had multiple owners. You've owned the team. Now this owner apparently isn't paying his bills. So it just doesn't look good. Move the team. I know
Yeah.
probably can't put it in Quebec. That would be the best spot for it, in my opinion, but I know there's a lot of different things going into that. So move it to Texas. Go somewhere there's money. Get a blue chip owner and move it along. Do it right. But
Yeah. Now,
that's where smart
in terms, if they are going to be shipping out everything that's not nailed down, like you said, and Jacob Chikrin's available, 2 first-round picks is pretty reasonable for that guy, especially now if we're talking Toronto. I don't know if that's possible unless Rielly goes out somewhere and then we bring in Chychrun and that's the replacement. That'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
But the kid is 20, early 20s, 23, 24 years old. He's just coming into his own. He's a big, powerful type of guy. He's on a decent contract as well. I don't know how long it is, but I think it's only in the mid 4s. So that'd be easily attainable in terms of, a lot of teams, I think could easily bring that in. And I don't know. I think if 2 first-round picks, I think they're honestly selling themselves short a little bit in Arizona if that's the price. And we'll see. I think, again, it's kind of just seems like it's a dumpster dive for anybody who wants to get their hands on something in Arizona right now. And I'd love the Leafs to take advantage of that in one way or the other. I thought they were at some point. I thought the Christian Dvorak thing might happen. I thought there was a few things that might happen. Connor Garland was rumored. But we'll see. I don't know. Jacob Chychrun, I think he might be the lone piece they keep because they, top pair defensemen don't come around very often, especially when you draft and develop your own. So I think, I would hope as an Arizona fan, if I was an Arizona fan, I would sure hope that they keep him and keep Clayton Keller and make those guys the pillars to what they're gonna do. But they can't just bring in Bedard and Wright and think they're going to be great. Like those guys need somebody else there to help run the show. They, as 18-year-olds, those guys aren't just going to come in and be great all of a sudden. So anyways, I don't know. Arizona's a mess.
No, Arizona is a mess. Well, you're right. He's 23 years old. He's got a $4.6 million cap hit. That's a player that you want to, hold on to because
I would hope so.
Like that don't grow on trees, like you said. But hey, if they want to sell it for 2 firsts, and the Leafs could swing some sort of deal to move out Morgan Rielly. I know everybody's going to cringe at that and bring in this young guy. I'd be all over it, but we have to wait and see.
If the scenario comes that Morgan Rielly's gone, Jacob Chychrun would be my number 1 want. I would want him. I would be fine with whatever the Leafs paid to go get him. To me, that's the answer. If Morgan Rielly's out, Chychrun's in, I'd be happy. Make it happen. But that's a lot of ifs.
Well, let's move to the other part of the defensive part of this thing, and that's the goaltenders. I want to ask you about the combo that's going to be Jack Campbell and Petr Marazzic. I have a TikTok launching tomorrow about Petr Marazzic, and the reason why I did that one is, for me, I'm breaking down these signings, and I think we saw something here when Curtis McElhaney was here, and he played with Freddie Anderson. McElhaney understood one thing. He's the backup. And he's not going to be the starter, and that mentality went through, and he was mentally sharp when called upon. That needs to be the same thing that goes into these 2 goaltenders here. They need to understand it's a 1A, 1B. You need to have that mental sharpness to know that you're not going in every night. Don't get pissed off. Don't get dejected. Don't get all pouty and down on yourself because you're not playing. Just be ready for when you're called upon. And I think Petr Marazzic knows that. Jack Campbell knows that. And I think that's why this could be a successful 1A, 1B. You look at Rask and Halak in Boston. I look at those kind of combos and I say that's where it needs to be. Both guys need to be on the same page. And I think the Leafs did a great job of finding a goaltender that understands this is what we're doing. This is our guy here. This is our guy there. Neither of you are the starter. Whoever's the hot hand will roll probably for a bit, but we always will go back and it'll be, I think for Campbell, it'll be 50, maybe 50-32 or 50-33 or something like that. In those numbers, it'll be broken down that way where Marazzic doesn't start as much, but if the guy's hot, you roll the hot. But what I like about this is they got a guy who understands what he's coming into.
Totally. So you mentioned it, Marazzic, and this is probably going to be in your video. I can't wait to watch it. But with Marazzic, his whole career, he's been a tandem goalie. In Detroit, it was right when Detroit was kind of on the downturn. And he came in and he was with, I can't remember who it was at the time, but Jimmy Howard was probably the guy. So, I mean, Jimmy Howard at the time was the guy, and Marazzic came in, stole some games from him. And for a couple of years, those two went back and forth. And like you said, it was about a 50-50 split, but it was probably more about 55-45 in terms of percentages. And he's done that his whole career. He went to Carolina, did the same thing. So I think if you're bringing him in, they're both the exact same age. If you're bringing him in, who better than the polite, nice Jack Campbell, who just wants to be here and be with the boys.
Yep.
And he's great as well. He had a great season last year. I'm not going to say he's elite, but he had an elite season last year with the numbers that he put up. So that can't be ignored.
Yeah.
His numbers were fantastic. So, the two of them together, I think they finally found the balance that they could never have with Freddie Anderson, because Freddie wanted 65 games a year. Like, that was what he wanted. And even if he was hurt, he even admitted in one of the interviews that he did after the season just recently, I should have sat out some games. I should have. I played too many, and it didn't allow myself to heal. And that was part of my problem. So, hey, Freddie, thanks for realizing that now. Like, I wish you would have realized that 2 years ago, before the Columbus series, because that would have been nice. But it is what it is now. But I think they're at a point now where we're going to see them maybe through the first 50 games, 25 and 25 each. And then by that point, they'll be able to realize maybe who's slightly better or way better, who knows. And I think that those two goalies will push each other enough and be hard on each other enough, but also supportive to really have a good tandem. And I think tandems are a real good way to go, because come playoff time, you go with who's hot, and you always know that the other guy is reliable enough to be there when you need him. And that hasn't been the case. That hasn't been the case for a long time in Toronto. And again, Freddie Anderson goes down. What was our thoughts the last few years? Michael Hutchinson, great. What are we going to do? Garrett Sparks, great. They had no backups. And when they did, like you said, McElhinney, he was on the back end of his career. He still chugged along for a couple of years after we let him go. But he played with my brother back in the day. Fun fact, in Notre Dame and here in Saskatchewan, him and my brother were a tandem. So there you go. But anyway, I think this is the best duo that this team has had. I'm not going to say either one of them is the best goalie that the Leafs have had, but I think this is the best duo that they've had since the Belfour Cujo-ish era days. This is the best tandem that this team has had.
I want to ask this question
now. Hopefully they perform.
That was my next thing. If Jack Campbell does perform like he did this past season and comes in and blows the doors off again, he needs a contract as well. So what would you be comfortable offering this guy, knowing that you've done this taking over for Freddie, now you've done this as a 1A, 1B. Would you give him the same kind of money you gave Petr Mrazek, or would you think you'd have to give him a little bit more to get him to stick around in that kind of role?
I think he's at a point in his career where he hasn't really had a great season yet, and he's almost 30. So I'm going to say that I think he would be more than happy to take a Chris Driedger type of deal, where it's $3.5 million for 3 years, somewhere in that range. I don't even know if he would necessarily have to go up to Marazic's number of 3.8, just because Marazzic, truthfully, has had a better career so far than Jack Campbell. So he's earned that 3.8. I think anywhere between 3 and 3.5 on a 3-year deal. And then you got a 3-year, 4-year tandem where you know what you have for a few seasons. I can only hope that happens. That would be great. 2 goalies, you probably get them under $7 million total. And you don't have that in many teams across the league where you have 2 goalies for that price. So I think the team would be happy with that. Of course, I think Jack Campbell's at a point in his career where I think he would be happy with that also. And that's where, Morgan Rielly's deal is all that more important, that he comes in at a nice number so that they can afford to do that. Because, luckily, for the next couple of years, most of their forward core, most of their defensive core is locked up. But that Morgan Rielly number is really going to determine how much real playing money they have next off season. And we don't have to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think that's what they're looking at.
Well, let's swing to the forwards, obviously, and then we'll look at the ones that were brought in. For you, I look at Ondrej Kase, and we talked about this over TikTok a little bit. I look at him as a player that you have to base the injury problem off of. Concussions, hasn't been healthy. Did well in Anaheim that one season, scoring 20 goals. That's what the Leafs are hoping they're getting, but it just makes me nervous, especially with this team that is not exactly built to be physical. There's nobody really to protect him. I know we went out and got a couple guys, which we'll talk about. But for me, Andre Kasha will start there. I see him probably being protected and sheltered on a third line.
Third or fourth line.
Yeah.
I think he's the type of guy who throughout his career, he's been a speedy winger who can do a little bit of everything, not quite everything. But at $1.25 million, he's a guy who can be swapped in and out of the lineup. They could hypothetically send him down to the minors. I don't think he'd clear waivers, but he's the type of guy who could be same deal as Pierre Engvall. And I think that's partially why they have so many forwards under contract right now, is because they want to be able to rotate guys in and out if possible. And I know they probably can't keep all the forwards they currently have. But maybe he gets maybe in the first 40 or 50 games, he comes in and out 10 or 15 times. Maybe he's not an everyday player, and they can maybe have a little flexibility with him to keep him as healthy as possible. And then by the second half of the season, who knows, maybe he's ready to go and he becomes an everyday player, and he proves that he's that type of guy who can be a second half stud for them, and almost like a second half, almost like a deadline pickup. And they can use him every day. That'd be great. But at the same time, it's a cheap enough deal where I'm not too worried if he gets hurt. He can go on LTIR, and they can play around with some flexibility. So I think it's a great gamble because it's at 1.25. If he's a 10 to 20 goal player, that's fantastic value.
Oh, for sure. No, like I said, the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous is the injury prospect there of him. But I mean, if he can get in there with Spezza and maybe make some magic happen, where Spezza kind of seems to be walking back the clock. Yeah, well, we'll talk about Brooksy in a minute. A little bit of a Marlies strip coming up here too. But hey, another guy, a lot of people are picking this guy to be a sleeper, especially in drafts and things like that for fantasy hockey, which, hey, by the way, you're joining our league this year, so you're going to have a little fun on that side of things. The email was sent out tonight. But Michael Bunting, this guy here, some people I've seen comments say, hey, this guy's kind of like a Darcy Tucker, might have a little bit of snarl to his game, may go to the net, scored 10 goals, 20 games. I think he will get a look in the top 6. I think they're looking for a Hyman-esque type guy to play with Marner and Matthews. For me, I want I want Matthews and Marner to finally have to earn digging that puck out. I want them to do that part of the game. Maybe that might just move their needle a little bit more, especially in the playoffs where that type of play is prominent. Maybe if you make them go do those things and not have a guy on their line that is going to go do it for them, maybe that just changes their pace a bit. And Michael Bunting might be that guy, because he's not exactly a guy that'll go dig it out all the time. He will go do it, but if you want to drive play a little bit more, I think Marner and Matthews kind of have to get in there. And I know it's not Marner's game, but hey, if you're going to go invisible in the playoffs, you need to add elements to your game. So I think that adding Michael Bunting on that line might be the answer right there. A guy that can go to the net and can do things, but is not Zach Hyman and will not do it all the time.
Yeah, former Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound. So that's notable. But he had 74 points in 57 games in his last year of junior hockey, 37 goals. He's 5'11", 200. So he's not huge, but he's thick. Like, he's built 200 pounds of 5'11".
Oh, yeah, it's not bad.
To sneeze at. And the thing that we all have to think about with Michael Bunting, for me anyways, he's played 26 total games in the NHL. So he's had a run in the AHL. He's had some good numbers. He's almost a point per game in the AHL. Actually, I think he is maybe a point per game. So like he's done well down there. And I think if anything, it looks like the time is right for him to now step in and start making the impact. And I want him to be a top line. I want him to be the top line guy. If that's the case, the rest of the lineup is stronger because of the depth, and they're able to, move certain other guys into better spots that fit better roles. So if he's the first line left winger, great. I mean, it's not going to be the sexiest pick right now, again, because he's only played 26 games, but he's shown that he can do it in other places. And I'm very curious about him. He's the most curious player on this entire roster for me, at least going into the season right now. I don't know what he is. And if he's at all Zach Hyman, that's amazing. That's huge. 900,000 for 2 seasons. So if he's great this year, we got him again next year for super cheap. If he's not great, maybe he's a bottom 6 winger. That's totally fine too.
Yep.
So
Serviceable.
to me, I honestly think Michael Bunting is my question mark of the season right now. Is he going to be that guy, or is he going to just be another bottom 6 forward, which is fine as well. But
Definitely.
I like what he's got. I like what I hear about him. And the fact that he had 10 goals last year out of nowhere, I like that.
On an Arizona team too.
On an Arizona team in 21 games. That's half a goal a game. Great. Let's have that.
Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, and get play with guys like Marner or Matthews or JT and Willie. Let's see what happens there. Another guy that I want to ask you about here. We signed David Campbell, and I've seen a lot of people. And I made a video about this already. So many people groaning about this guy. Why did we sign him? Why is it for 2 years? Why is it for the cap hit it is? For me, this is a center that you guys need, that the Leafs need desperately. We needed a defensive-minded third or fourth line guy that can win you faceoffs when the game is on the line or when you're on the penalty kill. His faceoff numbers, believe it or not, were not that great on the penalty kill, especially in his own zone. So everybody's hyped up about that, but he's a good penalty killer. A lot of Chicago people that I talked to said that this guy here is going to bring a little bit defensive stability and can be counted on in those moments. Will he score for you? Well, the verdict is no, he won't. But if he's playing with guys that can put up points, maybe he will. Depends on who he's with. He could be a product of his environment and maybe kick off for a few more goals than he got last year. But this guy is a defensive specialist that I think the Leafs needed. They went and signed him. And I think for Dubas, this is the Philip Deneau answer, where Philip Deneau shut down our star players. And he said, hey, we need someone who can do that on our roster. And this is that guy here. What are your thoughts on David Kampf and what he brings? And did you groan when they signed him?
At first, I didn't see what he was signed for. The money and term, I didn't see that. So I said, oh, okay, sure. That was my initial reaction. Yeah, okay. Then I saw 2 years. I said, okay, that's okay. And obviously, they believe in him because they wouldn't give him more than a year if they didn't believe in him. And 1.5. And then I thought, okay, 1.5 is an interesting number because that means they think he's more than a fourth line player. He's not quite a top 6. So it seems like it's third line money. And third line center, a guy that not a ton of people have heard of, and he's extremely defensive. I think ideally he ends up being the fourth line center. That would be perfect. And I've been harping on it. I think I've said it on this specific show. I think I've said it on other shows. They haven't had a defensive center since Jay McClement, and that's my boy. Jay McClement's my boy. But they haven't had a centerman to be on the penalty kill and shut teams down 10 seasons now. And the fact that the last couple of seasons, they haven't had a good penalty kill. And that doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think.
24th in the league last year. Absolutely horrendous.
Yeah. It doesn't get talked about because, everyone thinks, oh, Mikheyev's a pretty good penalty killer and Engvall can penalty kill. And, Kerfoot and Marner, they were on the penalty kill. They weren't good. So I think this is massive. This could be the best signing of the offseason, as strong as that sounds. The fact that this could take their penalty kill from 24th to top 10. That's how big this could be potentially, just because they haven't had a guy to win a faceoff. They haven't had a shutdown defense. Their best penalty killers were Kerfoot and Marner last year.
Yep.
Those guys aren't shutting guys down. Those guys are, adding dynamic elements to a penalty kill, but they're not shutdown guys. So the fact that they can bring in Kampf just alone, I saw so many times last year where they'd be on a penalty kill and the very first faceoff, it would be one back to the defenseman, passed over, shot, and score. Within 20 seconds, they would score a goal. And it happened time and time again, and nobody talked about it, which I'm so surprised that it wasn't a bigger storyline last year of how not good the penalty kill was. And I think taking minutes away from Marner would be great. As much as I like Marner penalty killing, I'm fine if he's doing it. But if they can take a few minutes away, he had the most penalty kill minutes on that entire team in terms of forwards last year. And the guy needs to be on the other side of things. As much as I like the fact that we have him doing both ways, great. He needs to be on the other side. He needs to be putting up more points. He needs to be better on the power play because our power play wasn't good either. So if that can alleviate Marner a little bit, take a little bit more pressure off of him and maybe help him focus a little bit more on the power play, I think that's a massive, massive win. And like I said, I think David Kampf, if it works, could be the signing of the offseason, the best one that we look back on next summer and say, wow, that was a game changer.
Yeah, like I was excited. A lot of people were down on him, but I got an article sent to me right away, and I think I flashed it right over to you actually right afterwards, and just talking about what he did because everybody
Yep.
was groaning, and I looked at it and I said, okay, this guy stopgap when Jonathan Taves is in, their best face-off guy. He is going up against the best guys every night, defending on the penalty kill. I was like, what's not to like? And just like you said, we
Nothing.
haven't had a guy like that, and I think we're crying for that, or at least the Leafs are
Oh,
anyway. And
yeah.
everybody's
They
always
couldn't
focused on
win.
Wallace. Yeah,
They couldn't win a face-off on the
yeah.
penalty kill last year. They don't. Hyman and Kerfoot were taking face-offs, and Engvall. None of those guys are face-off guys. And this is, I'm going to stick by this. This could be the signing of the offseason.
Oh, I'm right there with you. Don't worry. I was pumping the tires on that one. The other one, the big fish, I guess, for the front end for the Maple Leafs was Nick Richie. Everybody's excited. He went and talked to a bunch of teams. Boston decided not to bring him back. He was shocked to be a UFA. The video starts going around in 2014 where he said it would be unbelievable to be a Maple Leaf. You know, John Tavares-esque, everybody getting excited. This guy says the dream come true, once in a lifetime opportunity. He scored the 15 goals. He's physical. He's about 236 pounds. He throws it around. So the hits per minute for the Leafs are definitely going to go up. And he definitely would fit in nicely if he can play with them in the top six with either JT and Willie or Matthews or Marner. I still think he'll be second line. I think they really want Matthews and Marner to embrace going to get the puck. But I think for Tavares and Nylander, you put a guy like Nick Richie there who's just going to be a pain in the ass to play against and physical and can stick up for Willie and stick up for JT and drop the gloves as he has to. Also can play on the penalty kill. Also played second power play minutes with the Boston Bruins, a guy you can park his ass in front of the net and let him pot some goals. So this guy seems to bring a lot of things. And here's the best part. He chose the Maple Leafs. There were other teams that wanted him. And this is a guy, again, we talk about needs. The Leafs needed to address the physical aspect of their game with a guy who can play the game. So now you have Richie, you have Simmons, you have Muzzin. So you have some guys throughout your lineup who can do some things. And do I think Simmons will get in the lineup all the time? Probably not. If he's hot and rolling, maybe. But I think he's going to
Yeah.
be an in and out kind of guy with Kasha and a couple of the other guys we're about to mention on the Marlies here. We dive on them for a second. But I want to know, for you look at Nick Richie, what gets you excited and what does he bring?
Yeah. So the one worry that I have is that Nick Ritchie's foot speed is not good. And that's all I've heard from any of my Bruins friends, fans, friends that I have several. It's weird, but I have several. And that was the one thing that they told me. I was like, well, he doesn't have any speed.
We have
Go
one
ahead.
key element to that, though. Her name is Barb Underhill.
Well,
And
that's
she
true.
fixed John Tavares. She fixed
Yeah.
Pierre Engvall. So maybe she can fix Nick Richie.
I hope to goodness that they do that. So that was what I was going to say. He needs to do a ton of work. And I think he brings an element, and it's not just that he's physical, but just the size that he has and the different things that he can do compared to other guys that they've had in the past few years. I think he's a different player than Wayne Simmons. He's not that player. He's got a different size element than a James Van Riemsdyk that was here a few years ago. He's different. So I think this is a curious one. And not only that, they should have picked him over William Nylander. That argument's gone. They got them both now. They should have traded, who was it a couple years ago? They should have traded Nylander for Richie in Anaheim, Richie and Josh Manson or something like that.
Yeah, Manson, yeah.
Yeah. Now they got Richie on the team. They didn't have to do any of that. So that's a funny aspect of that. But I don't think that he should play on the second line. And I'm going to say this specifically again, foot speed. And you mentioned John Tavares. I don't know if the two of them on the same line would be as effective as we would want them to be. Now with Willie on there, maybe that changes everything. I think Willie's going to be one of the most underrated forwards in the league going into the year, just because I think he has a type of game that I think he's developed quite a lot over the last few years. He's not the same William Nylander as he was when he was 21 years old. And I don't think people know that yet. I don't think so. So maybe that's the case. Maybe he does work well with Willie, but I think that Nick Richie would be a good guy to have on either Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner's line to give that net front presence with those two guys and let them dangle around and do their thing, or on the third line. And like you said earlier with Kampf, and maybe it's Richie, Kampf, and whoever else is on that line, because there's numbers of options. But I think those two types of line combinations might be something that they'd look at. If he works with John Tavares, I think that could be a great second line. But I don't know if he's going to work. I have to see the guy more, because all I saw in Boston was him, having struggles staying in the lineup near that end of the year. All of his goals were on the power play, which is I heard that too. Well, he only scores on the power play, and I'm like, oh, good. Like,
We could use
that's
that.
a good thing. Yeah, we could use that. So does he end up getting on the first power play unit and just, like you said, parking in front of the net and doing his thing there? That could be where we see a lot of value out of Nick Richie on the power play. And I think he brings a nice element, and I'm glad we have him. The money, it's going to have to depend on, is he going to make himself worth that amount of money?
Yep.
But again, I don't think it's the amount of money that's going to kill you. It's not 2.5. It's not gonna handcuff you, I don't think. So we'll see. I think he's got a lot of options. I think he gives the team flexibility to kind of move him around in the top 9. And I think he'll eventually find his spot, but I just don't know where it is yet. That's all I have with Nick Richie.
All right. No problem. I'm excited for him anyways. I think
I'm
he's going
too.
to bring an element for sure to the squad. So it's good to see Leafs actually being able to make some moves with the limited cap space they had. But here's some guys that I want to know your opinion on if they make the Maple Leafs at all this season. I look at Nick Robertson. I think he should definitely get an opportunity. I look at Adam Brooks, your boy, your jersey right behind you. Definitely should be getting a look. Joey Anderson's another guy that I really think should get a look here with the Toronto Maple Leafs. For you, and then we haven't even talked about Curtis Gabriel, another player who can throw mitts and have some fun in the Leafs lineup. But for you, all those players we talked about, who do you think makes it in from the Marlies? I think Gabriel will be one of those players that's circled in and out, so we won't talk much about him. Happy to have him on the team and throw fists. We'll see what happens there. But Nick Robertson, Adam Brooks, and Joey Anderson, 3 guys I think definitely can fit in this Leafs roster. And if they have a good camp, they might make it right on the team.
Well, all 3 of those guys would make a killer first line for the Marlies. So let's just say that in advance. But Adam Brooks, I love the kid to death. I would definitely want to see that kid on the roster right now. And the 2 names that we haven't talked about really at all is Ilya Mikheyev and Pierre Engvall. And those 2 guys combined make $3 million, the 2 of them. And I just think that all the names you just named would be just as good as those 2 guys at half the price. Brooks is making $725, Gabriel's $750. Obviously $750 is a league minimum, but Brooks has his deal from a couple years ago, so he's still at $725. Wayne Simmons, you mentioned earlier, is another name where I would be just fine with him going in and out of the lineup over an Engvall or even a Mikheyev. Mikheyev's tough, and I know this isn't even about Mikheyev, but he's tough. I just don't know what he is. We saw him come in and be that speed element, and he scored some goals in his first year. Then he had the wrist injury, and he just hasn't been the same player.
No,
he hasn't been physical, even though he's got size. I don't think he's overly good defensively, even though he's got the speed to do a bunch of stuff. He was on. Oh, this is the argument. Well, he was a penalty killer. Yeah, again, he wasn't good. I don't think so.
The penalty kill wasn't good, guys. So let's drop that argument.
Just because he was out there doesn't mean he's a good penalty killer. But so the 2 of them, if there's a scenario that we see, and maybe this is a wait and see scenario, I don't think we have to rush. The first day lineup is not going to be lineup in game 20. That's one thing I think Leaf fans are going to have to come to accept. So maybe we see Mikheyev and Engvall in the lineup day 1. I think by November, December, that could be a package where we see both those guys out of town, just to be a little bit more efficient with the money. And maybe there's a trade deal. Maybe Dermott comes out of town. Together, the 3 of them, Dermott, Mikheyev, and Engvall are through $4.5 million, the 3 of them. So Chychrun money. That's exactly Chychrun money. So and other guys. So I was saying Dvorak earlier was my guy, the 3 of them, and then combination. But I like Joey Anderson. I like Adam Brooks. I like Nick Robertson. Some other guys on the roster too, like again Gabriel and Simmons. And I want to see those guys in the lineup way more than I want to see Mikheyev and Engvall in the lineup. So I think that day 1, those guys are probably American Hockey Leaguers. But by game 20, 25, 30, that's, I think, where we're going to see a shift. And I think we could see some of those guys come in the lineup.
No, I'll look forward to it. And look, for me, I want Nick Robertson in this lineup because I definitely think
So
he's
do
a
I.
top 6 player for this squad. And
He will be. He will
He'll
be.
add that element, and I think he'd fit nicely with John Tavares and Willie Nylander. But we got to wait and see. And who knows what happens in camp, injuries, and so forth and so forth. There's so
Nick
much.
Robertson is a guy who could be the number one left winger coming out of camp. He could be the number 2 left winger. I want to see it. There's too many other guys here right now for me to say, yeah, that he's won a spot. I want to see it. I want to see a camp. Camp's going to be extremely interesting because there's going to be probably 5 or 6 forwards legitimately, because they have like 22 NHL forwards right now.
Yep.
They probably going to be 5 or 6 forwards that don't make this team, and everyone's going to be questioning it. But it's just a numbers game right now.
Josh Hosang.
No, there's another one. Who knows?
So I want to ask you about Josh Hosang. Obviously,
yeah,
the book has been written a little bit on this guy, and maybe unfairly, seemingly, from New York Islanders and Lou Lamoriello, and all the jokes have been made about him being late and this, that, and the other stuff. And some of the things he's done is not exactly team friendly, and there's a lot of things. But the Maple Leafs seem to have a thing with being able to rehabilitate certain players. They did it with Alex Galchenyuk. The medical staff stuff. You look at Tyler Ennis, you look at Jason Spezza. They didn't have to rehabilitate the person, but they did the player. Maybe they can get something out of Josh Hosang that no one else has. And maybe they found the secret sauce in allowing a guy to come in, take part in camp. I know Galchenyuk didn't, but they did it right with him. They put in the AHL, no expectations, do your thing, work hard, have a good attitude. We'll see where it goes. And I think the same thing is going to happen with Josh Hosang. Come in, do camp, do your part, earn a contract, whether it's AHL or NHL. Do your part down there, and we'll see where it goes. And if he does well, you talk about deadline acquisition. If he's skilled enough, this guy could be a deadline acquisition that comes in and plays on your bottom 6 that can give you some minutes. If there's injuries, does he have to leapfrog a lot of guys? Yes, but if he does the right things, like we saw with Gouch, maybe the talent's there, maybe they draw it out of him, and maybe they can get something more that no one else has. For you, I'm wondering, do you see the same scenario, or is this just a guy coming in and they're trying to give a chance?
I think it's both. I think Josh Hosang is a type of player that could be one of those bargain bin finds that makes a major difference at some point in a season and maybe even into a playoff run. He just hasn't been able to find it yet in his career. And I don't think a whole lot of people quite know why. I think there's been some character issues, of course. We've heard the stories, like you said. He's got the book on him, like you said. I would love to see a scenario where Josh Hosang does earn a contract, but starts in the American Hockey League. And I think he would have to clear waivers. But I think at this point in his career, with what he's done, I think he would clear waivers. And the bonus of that is that the Marlies are in Toronto. So he doesn't have to go to some small town America, some small town in Connecticut, or wherever it is, to play on an American team that's not connected to the national team directly.
Yep.
The Marlies are right down the street. So he could live in the same house. He could hang out with the Leafs all the time still. He could become a part of the culture of the team, but go down to the Marlies and kind of just really establish that he can follow the system.
Yeah.
He can do it. And go, maybe he's at a point per game by Christmas, and then maybe we see him come up and earn his role wherever it is in the top 12. That's what I want to see from Josh Hosang. I don't think we're going to see him come in to camp and dazzle everyone and earn a contract and play in the top lineup right away. I think we're going to see if he makes the team. I want to see him earn it. I want to see him go through the Marlies and cut his jib a little bit. And, get into the culture and prove that he's ready to be a Maple Leaf and not just come in and get a spot. I don't think he's earned that in his career. So that's what I want to see from Hosang. And I hope it works out because, again, I think that could be a cheap find that nobody else would give a chance. And he earned it. I want to see him earn it. That's the biggest thing with him.
No, I agree with you 100%. Well, we've talked in length about the Leafs. So let's do some fun things around the league. I want to ask you about some notable RFAs that are happening right now, and we'll talk about the Kotkaniemi one first. Obviously, we know where he is now. He's with the Carolina Hurricanes. Everything's set up. It was smug. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what Liddell says or Dundon says. It was all done with a certain tone as we're getting you back for what you did to us earlier, which a lot of people thought the Montreal Canadiens did Waddell a favor in signing that deal. He made it easy. Here you go. Aho's done. Now Kotkaniemi's over there. Montreal Canadiens go get Dvorak. I don't care. You see my video on TikTok. I still, even with Dvorak, guys, don't think their center depth is that crazy in Montreal. I don't have them in the playoffs, but thank you to everybody who cranked that video because it's freaking wicked. Best one I've ever had. But I'll look at it like this, and I say Kotkaniemi signing that deal. Obviously, you're not going to sign a deal like that and not think you're worth it. But at the same time, if you're a player, you'd be stupid not to sign that deal and get the money. Because Montreal's only signing you to like $2.5 to $3 million. So he took the money and ran, and I'm sure there's like Elliot Friedman said, a deal in the drawer, for the further extension that can be signed on January 1. And they talked about the parameters of that, which was completely within the rights of being able to do what they wanted to do there with Kotkaniemi. So they went and they did it. But like I said, I don't care what anybody says. It was done smugly. It was done as a this is what we're doing. Have fun with it. And they blew it up. They did everything they needed to do to make it the most fun thing of the summer after doing a pretty jerk move and signing Tony DeAngelo.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard a lot of things that, the Hurricanes have had one of the worst off seasons, and this has completely put that out of my mind. I think this is hilarious. I love it. Every detail of it is just, like you said, 100% driven to do one thing, and that was to piss off Marc Bergevin. And I think they achieved that. Is he a $6 million player? No, he's not. But like you said, there's a lot that goes into RFAs that I'm going to say 90%, and even myself included, didn't know about how this works, because it just never happens and we never get to talk about it. So one thing that's really notable is that they can sign him to an extension in January. January 1, they can sign him to an extension. If the Canadians match this, they couldn't sign him to an extension until the summer. They have to wait, and they have to sign him to at least $6 million, whereas the Hurricanes don't. I don't know why that is, but that's the rule. So
that's trade him either. If Montreal matched,
and that's the other thing. They can't trade him. He's a Canadian from game 1 to 82, and they can't do anything about it. So I think Carolina made a nice move here because they forced the hand of Montreal. They knew they wouldn't be able to match it, and all the other stuff that goes along with it. And they have something in there. And I think Kotkaniemi now is not a centerman. I think he's going to be a left winger, or maybe they put him on as off wing, but I don't think he's a $6 million third line or fourth line center. I think he's going to be on the top line with Aho and maybe Teravainen, or with Svechnikov, and they have Vinny Trocheck there too, remember? Yep. So like they have some center depth already. They don't need a centerman. They need Kotkaniemi to come in and show his offensive upside on a wing. And I think he's going to be able to do that. And then, maybe you sign him to the number that I heard was give him the Kadri deal, 6 years, $4.5 million. Yep. Again, he has to earn that. I don't think he's even a $4.5 million player as of what we've seen right now. But if he goes and plays in the top 6 with those guys I just named, and maybe puts up 50, 60 points, yeah, he's a $4.5 million player.
Yeah.
So he can fill in at center if you need him to. So I think I love it. And is Dvorak a good replacement for Montreal? I think that's the option that makes the most sense.
Oh yeah.
But like you said, they lost Deneau, they lost Weber, they lost too much. I don't think Montreal is in a position this year that they're going to be ready to go. But Dvorak for 4 years at 4.4, I like it.
No, yeah, you definitely take that all the way. And like I said, their center depth isn't what it was, but again, Dvorak can come and do some things. Suzuki's definitely blossoming as a player as well. And you got some young guys like Caulfield and stuff starting to come into their own. I don't think Tyler Toffoli repeats at what he did last year for goal scoring either. I think that was kind of a flash in the pan, 1 year hot streak, maybe sticking it to Vancouver because he gets to play him a bunch of times.
Well, then most of his goals at the beginning of the season were against Vancouver. Yeah. Let's remember that. Yeah. So that's something to think about. But
yeah, we'll see what happens this year, but I don't see that repeating. But here's an interesting one. The press conference with Marc Bergevin today saying that they're not going to name an interim captain, that Shea Weber is still the captain. He will be with the team off ice, doing all the off ice stuff, being around the squad with the leadership. That leads me to believe if the Montreal Canadiens do squeak into a playoff spot, I think we see Shea Weber in the playoffs.
I wouldn't put it past that. Yeah, he's the Kucherov this year for sure. Yeah. Like I wouldn't doubt that at all. And I would hope that even if he wasn't, they still wouldn't name a new captain. Shea Weber's still under contract. The idea is that I think he's going to come back at some point. So if they were to strip him of the captaincy, even name an interim captain. I feel like that's a little bit of a low blow, and I think I don't feel like that would be right. So I'm good. I'm glad that that's the case. I'm glad. So if he comes back, great. But Shea Weber is one of the most respected players in the league. I don't think you do that to him.
All right, for RFAs, I got 4 players I want to ask you about. They are pretty big names. Brady Tkachuk. Seems the Ottawa Senators, for whatever reason, they got Drake Batherson's done, but the news coming out of Ottawa right now, at least the rumblings are, they haven't made Brady Tkachuk an offer that is within the ballpark of what he's willing to accept. And I'm wondering why you wouldn't. They're, I think, $7.8 million below the cap floor right now. Why wouldn't you spend money on a guy, A, that is marketable for your franchise, 2, production has gone up, 3, is probably your future captain when you sign him to this deal? I don't understand what the Ottawa Senators are doing in bungling this situation that seems to be an easy layup for them.
Yeah, I think they have plenty of cap room, so that's not the issue. Like you said, they're a few $1 million under the floor, so
Yep.
like they that's not the issue. I don't know why Ottawa always seems to happen to Ottawa, with especially in the last 7 years.
Yep.
The guys that deserve the money, they dangle around and don't give to. But then you see them, the Carlson thing, for example, they didn't want to pay him. Mike Hoffman back in the day, they didn't want to pay him. Certain guys, they just, for whatever reason, don't want to pay guys.
Yeah.
And they gave Thomas Chabot the money, and I thought that was over. And then we sit here today, and Tkachuk is now in the same situation as those other guys. So he's the guy you give the money to. So I don't know why. Like, is he asking for $9 million or $10 million? Is he trying to get a Mitch Marner contract, or what are we sitting here arguing about for them? That's what I'm.
I heard 875 is what he wants.
8-7. I'd give him that. I don't know. Like, I'd give him 7 or 8 years. If it's an 8-year deal under $9 million for Brady Tkachuk, I think I would do that. And if they don't think that he's that type of player, move him. Send him to Calgary. Let him play with his brother or something crazy. I don't know. Like, they already crazy. Have. The crazy part about Ottawa is they already have a ton of young forwards, and I don't know where they're going to find spots for all of them. So if Tkachuk's not their guy, that guy should have a C on his jersey. He should be getting 8x8 minimum. Like, I think you give him 8x8 minimum. If they're trying to give him 7 or something and they're lowballing him, that's not good. He's the captain. He's the future captain of this team. They can't, like, just get the deal done and make this guy the face of your franchise. I don't know why they don't do it.
Like I said, they're below the cap floor. Back the Brinks truck up, give the guy the money, move along, get yourself above the floor, and have fun with these young forwards. The next guy I want to ask you about is the I don't know, coup to the whole thing, Kirill Kaprizov. This guy had a great season last year. Is over in Russia. We know he's over in Russia, and everybody's like, oh, he's going to sign the KHL. I don't think he is. He has family over there. He's already stating he's just visiting. He wants to be in the NHL. I think they just need to find the number. For you, do you think the Minnesota Wild find the number before training camp? Because this, much like Brady Tkachuk, looks like a deal that might not get done, might miss a little time. Where are you at with this one?
He's an interesting case because, to me, he's the reason that the Suter and Parise buyouts happened this summer. And those buyouts are so interesting because this year it's not that big a deal, but then next year there's $8 million extra bucks on the cap next year, and then the year after that it's 2 more for 2 more years. It's $14 million, almost 15 for the next few years. So I just don't. Minnesota, for me, I just don't quite get. They're not exciting. They're not fun. They draft okay, but they've never really developed anyone of real big substance. They've got a couple of nice players.
Yep.
But before Kaprizov, Minnesota to me was not a playoff team, not even close. And even last year, I didn't think they were going to be even battling for a playoff spot. Kaprizov comes in, all of a sudden, they're exciting. They're fun to watch. What's going on with Minnesota? They're winning games. They had a good defensive team because they always did.
Yep.
They have goaltending because Cam Talbot's good again for some reason. Kaapo Kakinen's coming out of nowhere. So I hate Minnesota. I think they're boring. But with him in the lineup, all of a sudden they got something there. He's the same type of player. I think they need to give him a long-term big contract and make him the face of that franchise. And I just, again, I don't know how they're going to do it, because those buyouts to me just put such a wrinkle into everything. And they don't have a ton of guys locked up or that are coming up that they need to worry about. I'm looking at their thing right now. I mean, Kevin Fiala maybe needs a contract next year. Other than that, I don't see a ton of guys that need money in the next couple of years, really. I mean, they have all their defensemen pretty much locked up. So I would say give him the money, give it to him. He's the reason they were any good. And I don't know. I don't see anybody else that could ever come close to replacing him in Minnesota.
No, definitely. Well, the next two are Canadian flavors. We have Elias Patterson and Quinn
Oh
Hughes
God.
in Vancouver. Here's the caveat. Vancouver's got $10 million, really $10.6 million in cap space to get two cornerstones of their franchise locked up. A lot of people worried about the health of Elias Patterson. But I look at these two players and I say, again, these are two guys you need to lock up long term. But where do you have the cap space to do it?
Yeah. So they have 10.6 plus Michael Furland 3.5. He's on LTIR. So make that 14, kind of. So technically, I mean, you could give them each $7 million and everybody would be happy. But I think Patterson's not in the $7 million conversation. I think Quinn Hughes might be. But I don't know if Quinn Hughes maybe thinks he's an 8 million, maybe he's a Miro Heiskanen type of deal. So I don't know. Like, I think this is a situation where those players got too good too quick for Vancouver. And this is what I've said about Vancouver, is I don't think that they're a team that was ready to be as good as they were, as quick as they were, in this rebuild that they're currently in, because they're not out of it yet. But I think what Pettersson did for them, what Hughes did for them, what Besser did for them, was they sped it along too quickly, and then they couldn't figure out what they were. They signed a bunch of guys to terrible contracts. They now have moved all those guys and brought in other guys. OEL had a big deal, and they went out and got Garland and gave him $5 million essentially a year. They traded in for Tanner Pearson and gave him 3.25, and now they're in a whole new situation. So I don't know what they're gonna do, because even on like Jason Dickinson's another one. They went out and got him and gave him 2.6. So it's like, okay, who are you giving the money to? And Vancouver's always had that problem in the last decade, since the Sedin's era. Who are they giving the money to and why? It's just an interesting debate for them, because they have a lot of contracts, and this is the problem the Leafs don't have. Yes, the Leafs are in contract. They're tight against the cap. But what the Leafs don't have is a bunch of contracts between $2 and $6 million. They have like two guys that entire, like, maybe a couple on the defensive side, but those are their best players on defense. So these guys have a bunch of middling contracts that are just kind of muddying the waters. And I don't know what they're going to do there. I really, really don't. Like, are they going to trade Quinn Hughes to New Jersey? I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll trade him to New Jersey for PK Subban double retained. I don't know. But it just,
Elias Patterson too said that he, the comments coming out, he's not exactly happy in Vancouver.
Right.
That's another thing.
That shouldn't be the case. That should not be the case. With the way that they've been playing, with all the young guys they have, they should be a good team in the Pacific for the next 6, 7, 8 years. And for whatever reason, they just keep getting themselves into corners there in Vancouver that they just can't seem to get out of. And I think it's hilarious, but I also hate it, because I feel like Vancouver should be really good, and that we're missing out on something with Vancouver these last couple of years. It bothers me a little bit. I just don't know how they get out of this in terms, if both these guys want $8 million, for example, they want 16, they have to somehow clear $3 or $4 million. I don't know. I don't see how they're going to do that without making their team worse. Maybe Pearson and Hamonic go out of town, but they just re-signed those guys, so they're not going anywhere.
Tucker Pullman, $2.5 million.
Pullman, they just signed for 4 years. Is Tyler Myers out of town? Maybe that's the move. Maybe you move Tyler Myers out and just dump him. But I just don't know. Vancouver's so weird, because I feel like they have all the tools, but they can never get them in the right spot at the right time. That's my thought on Vancouver.
There. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. I agree with you. And you're wasting a guy like JT Miller, man, because I love JT Miller.
He's Miller, so good.
It was great in Tampa and been great for the Vancouver Canucks. But I just want to see them get it right. And it's like everybody always says, Jim Benning is great for drafting, but needs to put the phone down on UFA day and just walk away.
Yeah.
Leave it in a vault. Go away.
A top six of something combined of JT Miller, Pedersen, and Besser, and then Garland, Horvat, and whether it's Hoglander, Podkolzin, like that's exciting. Why is Vancouver in a bad spot right now? Like it shouldn't be the case. It's bothering me.
It makes you so sad because there's a team that could
Yeah.
do so much, and Vancouver fans are passionate as all hell.
Oh
Their
yeah.
owner is passionate as all hell. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
their GM seems to bungle it. But before I let you go tonight, Clark, I want to ask you for one storyline that every fan should watch this season, that we should get excited about, get behind, one that you think is kind of flying under the radar, that could be a real fun one to watch, other than Seattle.
Yeah, no, I was going to say Seattle, but my other one is the LA Kings. And I think, again, I said it, the Pacific is a weird division. And I've loved what LA's done in the last 12 to 16 months. Bringing in Victor Arvidsson, the draft picks that they've brought in, the Byfields of the world, the Turcottes. I want to say they have 6 forwards on their roster currently that are 22 or younger. And they also have a bunch of forwards that they've drafted the last couple of years that I would say are really good prospects. I think, and not only that, they have Drew Doughty still, they have Kopitar still, and Peterson has overtaken Jonathan Quick as the starting goalie there. So I like everything that LA's got going on, and I think they're going to be the team to watch. If they're a dark horse, I would say by halfway through the year, we might find out that they're not really a dark horse anymore. They could be a horse. So I don't know, whatever they've done there, I think every little move has been really interesting. They haven't put themselves Danault. I love the Danault move because it allows Byfield and some of those other younger guys to not have to be everything. Danault can come in and do a lot of dirty stuff and let those guys be what they are. And maybe he can even take a little pressure off Kopitar to be that guy too, where Danault can come in and take certain faceoffs and play defensively, and Kopitar doesn't have to do that. Maybe we see Kopitar get back to 90-point seasons type deal that he used to do. I'm dead serious. I love everything LA's got going on. And I think they're going to be really fun in the Pacific, especially. I think they're a playoff team.
See, when I had Rod Peterson on, I said the two teams that I liked the most going into the season was the LA Kings. He raised his eyebrows at me, thinking they weren't there. And then I said the Philadelphia Flyers as well. As much as I hate them as a Leafs fan, I think what they did with their entire organization,
I like that too.
Meter, I think they really supplanted the defense, and guys who want to play there in front of Carter Hart, they really made it more difficult for teams coming in. But I love LA. I love what LA has done. And I said it to Rod and a lot of people, even Josh, who's not here tonight, just got married. Tip of the cap to you, buddy.
Oh, my hat's backwards.
But, I thought LA did a lot of good things, and I like what they did. And I've heard from Dennis Bernstein, who's been on the show a bunch of times. He covers the LA Kings, that they have these players coming. You've got these young guys, but they're not putting them in the lineup just yet because they want them to come along. They want to move some contracts. And now they've done those things, and now they're starting to add. Adding a guy like Philip Danault to that second spot, it makes me excited for that team. I don't want them to win. I want the Leafs to win, but I want them to have success. I want to see.
They're all West. They're all West.
But,
they can win a bunch.
But I do think.
But the other thing too, like they brought in Athanasiou, who was sneaky good. I think of an addition. They brought in Brendan Lemieux, which gives them a sandpaper element. They have Gabriel Velarde that they've just been marinating for a couple of years that he's coming in.
Yes.
They got Carl Grundstrom in the Jake Muzzin trade, and he's going to be a bottom 6 type of guy for them. Alex Edler was a sneaky signing for 1 year. He'll be a second pairing type of guy. Matt Roy is one of the most underrated guys. Everything I've ever heard from anyone who talks about Matt Roy is that he is so underrated, it's scary. And then they have so many young guys. Tobias Bjornfoot hasn't even found his spot in the lineup. He's a former first-round pick, I want to say. Michael Anderson, again, another thing. Everything I've heard about Michael Anderson defensively is that he's another guy that is just coming out of nowhere, and nobody's talking about him, but people love him in LA. They have Tyler Madden, Alex Turcotte, Arthur Kaliev, Quentin Byfield, Lias Anderson, who they stole from the Rangers, Rasmus Kupari, Samuel Hellenius, who is a 6'6" guy they just drafted, Samuel Fajimo, Akil Thomas, and that's only a few of their forward prospects. Like, that's ridiculous. They just drafted Brant Clark in the top 10. Jordan Spence is a good, solid prospect defensively. Cale Clegg is 23. I like him a lot. It's insane how many good prospects they have. And this is why I've said for months, and this is a topic we haven't talked about yet, I think that they're primed, if they want, to go get Jack Eichel. I think LA is the team. They have so many prospects. They have cap space if they want it. I think they could put together a trade if they want to, but they might not even want to at this point in their development.
Here's my thing with Jack Eichel, and I'll say this, and this will be the last bit we do for the show tonight. Jack Eichel, for me, is a player I don't trade for. I just don't. Because
I can see it.
That neck injury is a problem. And then B, we don't know what he's going to be like once that surgery happens, because whatever team gets him is probably going to give him the green light to go get it done. Then what version of Jack Eichel do you get back? And what is it on the ice? Okay, so if you're giving up all these assets, you want to know what he's going to be. I think, unfortunately for Jack Eichel and the Buffalo Sabres, he gets the surgery as a Sabre, he plays a season as a Sabre, and then they see where his value is. I think we're 2 years away from Jack Eichel getting traded.
I don't disagree with you. I just think, thinking of where LA is at, with Kopitar, Brown, and Doughty still there in their 30s now. Kopitar's 34.
Crazy.
I don't think that they are going to just let those guys ride off into the sunset. I think they want to give them a legitimate chance before their careers are over. And I just think with Jack Eichel potentially coming over there as a second line center, or first at that point when it happens, if it happens. But if they can find a way to fit that in salary cap wise, they only have 12 forward spots. I just named you like at least 10 prospects that aren't going to all be first liners. So, I mean, that's where I'm saying, I feel like there's something brewing with LA that they're not even done yet.
Well, you know what? There's lots of other players they can go after. I mean,
lots of other
players in Tampa as well as another player that's been rumored to be on the block. But I just look at Jack Eichel. Even if you get him this year, he's not playing this year.
Right.
He goes for the surgery. Maybe he doesn't play a lot next year because he's got to get back to strength and figure that all out. Who knows what it is and what he has to go through to get back onto the ice. So even if you trade for Jack Eichel, you're still maybe a year and a half away from using whatever version of Jack Eichel you get. And that's why I say, I think for all parties involved, he's in Buffalo for 2 more years, because then he can play, bring that value back up. And then a team says, oh yeah, we'll give you 4 first-round picks. Here's 2 extra prospects and a roster player. Let's get it done.
And if he plays well and he gets back to that level, he's worth it. But until then, I totally understand where you're coming from.
I look at it like this, though. At that time, though, when Jack Eichel's ready to get back on the ice, if he's still a Buffalo and they've gone and got Shane Wright or Connor Bedard, maybe the tide starts to turn in Buffalo. But I really think they're going to have to get new owners.
Yeah, totally. CC wants to say hello. Say hi, CC.
Hello, CC. All right, well, guys.
And then she's gone.
This is it's been a great talk, Clark. I always love having you on Talking Leafs, buddy. Love your content. Make sure you check out Clark Munroe on all platforms, whether it's Twitter, whether it's TikTok. Make sure you check out the Squadcast. Check out the Rod Peterson show as well. Tuesday nights for the Squadcast. Make sure you tune in. 7 p.m. Mountain Time, is it?
That's correct. Yeah, 9 p.m. Eastern Time every Tuesday night. Yeah.
There you go. Make sure you check it out. This is Offside Hockey Talk, where hockey comes to talk.